Tools for projecting human resource needs. It is important to learn different tools for projecting human resource needs and demand of the workforce. There are three major tools for projecting human resource needs. First is called as trend analysis. Second is ratio analysis. And third is scatter plot. First of all, we should know about trend analysis. Trend analysis is a study of firms' past employment needs over a period of years to predict future needs. We need to know about how many people the firm select in the last 5 years so that we can predict the future needs of that particular organization. Trend analysis aims to identify trends that might continue in the future, but it is not always necessary. Sometimes trends may not continue as such as it was in the past. For example, you might compute the number of employees at the end of each of the last 5 years, or perhaps the number of employees in each subgroups like sales, marketing, and production. If you can compute the number of employees in the last 5 years, you can go for the projection in the future employment needs. However, trend analysis can provide an initial estimate of future staffing needs, but employment levels rarely depends just on passage of time. It is not only the matter of time that in the last 5 years you have selected 20 people and in the next 5 years you will select again another 20 people. This is not always the case. There are a number of other factors which may contribute in such trends. Other factors like changes in sales volume, productivity, voluntary turnover also affect staffing needs. So we need to keep these factors in mind when we are using trend analysis for projecting human resource needs. Another method that is called as a ratio analysis. Ratio analysis is a forecasting technique for determining future staff needs by using ratios between causal factors such as sales volumes and number of employment needed. So we have to draw a ratio between number of sales volume and number of employees needed in the organization. Suppose a salesperson generates rupees 500,000 in sales. If the sales revenue to salespeople ratio remains the same, it means you would require 6 new salespeople next year to produce a hope for extra rupees 3 million in sales. But this is not always the case. Just like trend analysis, ratio analysis also assumes that workers' productivity remains about the same. It means that you can't motivate each salesperson to produce much more sales for better profitability. So that's why whenever we need to use ratio analysis, we need to keep motivation factors of salespeople in mind, so we can get better results in projecting human resource needs. Third is a scatter plot. This is a bit different from trend analysis and ratio analysis. Scatter plot is a graphical method used to identify the relationship between two variables, obviously two relevant variables for projecting human resource need. For example, a hospital of 500 beds expects to expand to 1200 beds over the next 5 years. Therefore, the human resource director wants to forecast how many registered nurses they will need in the next 5 years. This is quite tricky. The HR director realizes that he has to determine the relationship between size of the hospital and number of nurses required for such hospital. Therefore, he collected data on registered nurses and hospital size from number of neighboring hospitals in the town. And then he determined the relationship between hospital size and number of nurses using scatter plot. You can see the straight line. The straight line showed that you can estimate the number of nurses needed for each hospital size. Thus, for a 1200 bed hospital, the HR director would assume she needs about 12, 10 nurses in the next 5 years. So scatter plot is quite effective tool for determining human resource needs. Last but not least is the managerial judgment. It is not always the case that ratio analysis, trend analysis, and scatter plot help you to identify the human resource need. The managerial judgment should play a big role. It's rare that any historical ratio, trend, or relationship will simply continue. This is not possible. You will therefore have to modify any forecast based on the subjective factors. For example, the motivation of employees, their involvement in the organization, employee satisfaction level, and their behavior with the managers. So we need to keep managerial judgment in mind while determining human resource needs for our organization.